Are you all familiar with a disease called facial arteriovenous malformation? I was born with this condition, causing a large bump to form at the center of my face. This is a congenital disease, where arteries and veins, which normally have different roles, somehow become connected, allowing blood to flow between them and resulting in a large blood clot in that area. From a young age, I underwent numerous surgeries, each one causing further distortion of my face. And during my school years, particularly in elementary school, I was terribly teased by the boys in my class. This facial disorder, impossible to hide no matter how hard I tried, led to severe self-consciousness. I honestly thought I would end my life without ever experiencing love or marriage, believing there would be no one who could love someone with such an ugly appearance. I seriously thought so, at least until I met him. I, Sophia, was a hopelessly negative person, lacking self-confidence, and recognized by others as such. Although I was somewhat influenced by what people said about my disease, the existence of my family, especially my sister, was what really exasperated my complex. You see, my sister Mia has beautiful double-fold eyelids, long lashes, a perfectly shaped nose. She's as pretty as a doll and is often complimented. My parents were extremely proud of her and frequently gifted her new clothes, shoes, and hair accessories. In contrast, my ugliness, a product of my disease, was treated as if I didn't exist. They'd say, "It'd be pitiful for Mia to be seen as siblings with such an ugly sister." For this reason, my parents did not want me to spend much time with my sister. However, Mia didn't care about my disease at all. She treated me normally, even giving me the toys and hair accessories she'd received, and defending me against those who made comments about my face. She was always there for me. While I love and cherish her for being such a saving grace in my life, my parents' love was always directed at her. They showed no interest in time. And for instance, even if Mia got grades in the 70s, they would compliment her. "Getting this high is incredible! Our Mia is not only pretty, but also good at studying. We're truly proud of her." But no matter how well I did on a test, they would always dismiss it with, "You know, being good at studying isn't enough to get you through life. In this world, even if you're not very smart, you can get by if you're attractive and pleasant. Since you're not good looking, I think you're going to have a hard life." When I found a pretty dress I liked, they'd say, "It might look good on Mia, but it wouldn't suit your face. You'll just become a laughingstock, so you better not wear it." When I showed interest in makeup and bought a magazine with my own allowance, they'd tell me, "Makeup can't cover up to your level. It's a waste of time." They kept comparing me to Mia, and every single thing I did was denied, and I lost confidence, more and more. Mia often protested against my parents' attitude towards me, but that just made things worse. That's when I realized there really is no place for me in this family. And it's not like I had a place at school either. I was teased by the boys in my class with nicknames like Monster or Face Weapon, and there were times when I was avoided because people said they might catch my disease if they touched me. Even in middle school, although the treatment wasn't as harsh, there were still boys who would grimace just by me being next to them. And while no one would say anything to me directly, I would often hear whispers about me. But what hurt the most was being made the subject of a punishment game. There used to be a game where the person who lost had to confess their feelings to someone in the class, and I was often the target of that punishment game. Of course, I knew they were only confessing because they had lost a game, so I politely declined. But then they go around saying, "I got rejected by that monster girl!" And I was yelled at by one of the boys I had turned down, saying, "Don't get all high and mighty just because it's a punishment game, ugly." At the time, it seemed so selfish and unfair to me, but I was convinced that my face was a sin. I thought I was causing discomfort to others just by being there. I was filled with guilt. During my years in elementary and middle school, I had no good memories of boys at all. But there was once, just once, when I fell in love with a boy in my class. This happened in my sophomore year of high school. A boy from my class, whom I happened to be seated with after the classes were shuffled, would treat me like any other person, without making fun of or avoiding my face. He would greet me with a good morning, every day as our seats were adjacent. I knew full well that he didn't have any feelings for me, but his single greeting brought me so much joy in the face of constant ridicule and avoidance that I naturally began to like him. However, I didn't really want to date him or anything like that. I just wanted this pleasant time to last as long as it could. But day by day, I felt more and more that I liked the boy, and after worrying about what to do, I asked my sister for advice, and she said, "I think it's a good idea to just tell him how you feel." After much deliberation, I decided to tell him how I felt. So I left a letter expressing my feelings in his desk. A few days later, I noticed something strange about the atmosphere in the class when I arrived at school. It was as if everyone was murmuring and glancing in my direction. As I was wondering what was going on, the boy, who had arrived at school before me, approached me and asked, "Hey, did you put this letter in my desk?" I responded by silently nodding, my gaze fixed to the ground. In that moment, I heard a sound above my head as if something was tearing, and the next moment, pieces of my torn letter were falling into my sight. It's troublesome when something like this happens. What are you going to do if strange rumors start spreading? You fell in love just because I greeted you out of politeness? How inexperienced in love are you? I didn't mean anything by it. If I gave you the wrong impression, I'm sorry. He said this, and for some reason, the class erupted in applause and cheers. And I heard comments like, "Wow, you've got guts," and "That's a bit sad, isn't it?" After that, my memory is a blur, and the next thing I knew, I was at home. But I don't remember anything about the journey. All I can remember is the feeling of guilt and despair. After that incident, I couldn't bring myself to go to school anymore, and I stopped attending. When my parents heard about what happened, instead of being on my side, they said, "His reaction was justified. You caused trouble, so you should apologize." Eventually, they began to scold me for not going to school for such a trivial reason, and tried to force me to go, but I just couldn't get myself to move. In the end, I dropped out of high school and became a recluse. After I became a shut-in, my older sister was worried and repeatedly tried to communicate with me. In contrast, our parents would either verbally abuse me in front of my room every morning or forcefully enter my room to berate me directly. They'd hurl insults such as, "We never should have had you," or "You're such a disgrace," causing me to despair every day, wondering why I even existed. Apparently, my sister noticed my situation and consulted our grandparents on our mother's side. The following day, they came to hear my story, and after learning about the events at school and our parents' subsequent reactions, they were furious. They scolded our parents, saying, "We will take care of her," and came to my rescue. My grandparents did not abandon me, even though I was in a state of despair. They faced me directly, and with their support, along with my sisters, I gradually started to recover. Although it was only my desire to end my life that had quieted down. I was unable to erase my fear and mistrust towards the opposite sex, no matter how hard I tried. However, my grandfather would always encourage me, saying, "There will be a time when you can be happy in any way without having to get married. We just want you to be happy in any way you want to live. So forget about the guy who said terrible things to you. It's a waste of time to keep remembering such a person. We may not have much time left, but you still have many futures ahead of you." My grandmother also always reassured me, saying that as long as I was happy, that was all that mattered. She would often compliment me, saying things like, "Your skin is so glowing, it makes me jealous," or "Your eyes are as beautiful as jewels." My sister would also visit our grandparents' house and spend time chatting with me. We'd read magazines together, discuss cute cosmetics, and generally enjoy our time. After living like this for about 3 years, I began to feel motivated to do something. I decided to start studying again to get my high school equivalency diploma, which I eventually acquired. Afterwards, I started looking for work I could do from home, and slowly started to earn income. The income was less than what others made working outside, but considering the days when I had shut myself in and was in a state of despair, I felt that I had grown quite a bit. However, I was still scared of comments about my appearance, so I couldn't go outside. This was how I was living at my grandparents' house, when my parents suddenly showed up one day. They hadn't even bothered to make a single phone call since I moved to my grandparents' house. but they stormed in, saying they had something to discuss with me. They announced, "There's a marriage proposal for you. The prospective groom is the son of a medical foundation representative. Apparently, he also has some issues and has a hard time finding a spouse. So the focus has now turned to you. But isn't this great? He's rich and he's willing to take someone like you who's been a burden on society." I was taken aback by this sudden turn of events, but my grandparents stepped in to help. They argued that it was unreasonable to make decisions without considering my feelings. My father, who seemed to speak convincingly, responded, "This might be the last chance for her. She's had so many painful experiences because of her appearance. Why not consider this as a chance for happiness?" The face of the man in the marriage document was mostly hidden by his bangs and wasn't clear, but I could make out his plump physique and the contours of his face. I understood instantly that he was probably also being forced into marriage to get rid of some problem. Or maybe he was an extreme eccentric who liked unusual things. But even if I rejected the proposal here, it seemed like the negotiations with the other family were already in progress. They seemed like a wealthy family, and my parents would undoubtedly try to force me into the marriage. If I ran away from this, it could potentially have negative repercussions on my grandparents. For the sake of my grandparents who have protected me from that day until now, I made up my mind. I understand. I will accept this proposal. Upon hearing these words, my grandparents' eyes widened. They embraced me and tried to persuade me numerous times. "You don't have to go along with such a ridiculous proposition." However, I told them through tears, "Grandma, Grandpa, until that day, I had lost all hope in life. But because you were by my side, I was able to enjoy living until now. I can't thank you enough, but I don't want to cause any more trouble, so I've decided to accept this marriage proposal. Maybe, like Dad said, this is my last chance." My grandparents cried soundlessly and hugged me tightly. And then a few days later, I had to meet with the man from the proposal and his parents. I hadn't expected that this meeting would change my fate at all. The prospective groom, a man named Matthew, was hunched over and always looking down. His face was mostly hidden by his hair, and his skin seemed to be rough in places. His voice was so quiet that I sometimes couldn't understand what he was saying. Matthew barely glanced at my face throughout our meeting and only answered questions in short, clipped sentences. I wondered, is this man going to be my husband? He can't even hold a basic conversation. However, I was in no position to complain. Both sets of parents seemed not only enthusiastic about the marriage, but acted as if it was already decided. I felt comfortable, but I didn't feel like I could say no. Eventually, the marriage arrangement was agreed upon. Sure enough, as the son of a wealthy family, a luxurious high-rise apartment was provided as our new home, furnished with high-end branded appliances and furniture. However, our conversations didn't flow well. It was almost like he couldn't see me. He was so silent. However, being constantly silent was also stressful, so I tried to find a conversation topic. "Why did you accept this marriage proposal, Matthew?" Upon asking this, he surprisingly began to take off his long-sleeved shirt. Confused by his sudden action and in a state of panic, I saw that his skin was red and appeared inflamed. He explained, "I suffer from a skin disease called psoriasis. It doesn't transfer from touch, so please don't worry. But because of its appearance, I've reached this point without any romantic experiences. There were even rumors that I had an STD, which is impossible. Moreover, my appearance is so unattractive that even my parents don't want to involve themselves with me. They probably brought up this marriage to get rid of me. I'm sorry for involving you in my circumstances." After explaining, he redressed and bowed deeply to me. I saw a glimpse of inflammation at his hairline, and I understood that he was growing his bangs long to hide it. "I see. Please, raise your head. I'm in a similar situation too." When Matthew raised his face, I told him everything about my past. When he heard my story about high school, he started crying. "I can't believe something like that happened to you. It must have been so hard at the time. It's unacceptable that a guy would do that to you, treating you like an exhibit. That's outrageous." He became angry to a stranger on my behalf and offered me words of comfort. Despite having experienced his share of hardships, he cried and became angry upon hearing my story. I wondered, how kind-hearted is this man? Seeing this, I commented, "We seem quite similar, don't we?" Matthew replied, blushing with a shy smile. I was thinking the same thing. After that, we spent the entire night sharing our life stories, crying, getting angry, and sympathizing with each other. From then on, we slowly started to understand each other. I tried to understand his disease and collected a variety of information, trying everything from dietary therapy to supplements. But, I noticed that he was surprisingly picky about food, especially vegetables. So I tried different seasonings and cooking methods and made various arrangements so that he could eat more easily. Then perhaps, finding the taste to his liking, he began to enjoy his meals, saying they were delicious. He began to improve his constitution, little by taking in nutrients through meals and taking medication. Also, to reduce stress, we started doing things like yoga and having lots of conversations, and I saw Matthew's smile slowly increase. Matthew never made a nasty comment about my face, but rather, he repeatedly praised me, saying, "Cute," while blushing. Just once when I asked him, "Don't you dislike my face?" he told me, "Not at all. It's part of your character, and I think it's cute. And you've managed to stand up on your own despite going through tough times. I don't think there's another woman who's as strong and wonderful as you." His words gave me a profound sense of comfort. Over the following few years, we carried out a plan to improve Matthew's physical condition. As a result, his skin inflammation calmed down a bit, and the inflammation at his hairline became less noticeable. Moreover, thanks to his disciplined lifestyle, he lost weight and turned into a slim and smart-looking Matthew. I couldn't help but fall in love with him all over again. When he tidied up his obstructive bangs, it suited him very well. Matthew, who had been shy about his skin condition until now, said, "I can't show Sophia an unsightly figure." He became more confident, and the impression of the people at his office slowly changed for the better. Apparently, he hadn't told anyone about his disease, assuming they wouldn't understand. When he finally opened up about it, he was surprised that everyone accepted him. They even told him, "Why didn't you tell us? Trust us more." One day, while we were spending such days, Matthew suddenly said, "Hey, do you want to have a wedding ceremony?" Even though I had become a bit more positive since marrying him, I was still afraid of appearing in front of a large crowd. When I hesitated, he said, "If you really hate the idea, of course we don't have to. But I thought it would be a good way to express our gratitude to the people at my company who helped me. But the fact that I can even think like this is all thanks to you, Sophia. The old me would have thought that a wedding ceremony was impossible because I didn't want my dirty skin to be seen. But thanks to your cooperation, my symptoms have calmed down. So I think I can face forward more than before." His gentle words moved me, and after a lot of soul-searching, I decided that I wanted to take a step forward and agreed to have a wedding ceremony. But I don't have any friends, so the only ones I invited were my parents, grandparents, and my sister. However, when it was less than 4 months until the wedding, my sister was found to be pregnant. To be safe, my sister decided to absent herself. So in the end, only my parents and grandparents attended. My grandparents were happy to participate, but my parents clearly disliked the idea. However, they couldn't refuse due to their status, so they participated reluctantly. The same was true for Matthew's parents. They didn't seem happy at all, but because some of their foundation's associates and people they knew were attending, they reluctantly agreed to come. But both sets of parents were good at maintaining appearances, so in front of the other guests, they said things they didn't really think, such as, "We struggled with his illness, but we're glad that he has grown up so well," or, "We're proud of our child, who has lived strongly without being defeated by prejudice," all the while pretending to be moved to tears. The guests, fooled by our parents' false tears and words, even shed a few sympathetic tears, which only added to my astonishment at their audacity in wanting to be seen in a good light despite everything. But Matthew was not one to silently endure our parents' deceit. When it was time for the groom's letter to be read aloud, he chose that moment to speak about his past. He spoke about how he had endured a difficult time as a student because of prejudice and discrimination due to his skin disease. Despite his condition not being contagious, no one would touch anything he had touched. But meeting and marrying me had given him a more positive outlook. He also said, "Both my wife and I have received terrible treatment from our own parents. My wife was constantly compared to her older sister and was verbally abused her whole life. When she stopped going to school due to cruel comments from her classmates about her facial disease in high school, her parents never took her seriously and even said she should apologize to anyone who had to confess to her because of her face. This hurt her so deeply that she could hardly go outside. I too was frequently berated by my parents about my skin, being called dirty over and over again. Here is the proof. With that, he played a recording of his parents berating him for his skin condition. The voice recording included terrible comments like, "Your skin makes us uncomfortable to look at," and "We should have never had a child with such dirty skin." His parents tried to stop the recording, but it was too late. The cold stares of the listeners pierced them, and they were dumbstruck. My parents also seemed extremely uncomfortable as whispers circulated around them. Despite the awkward conclusion to our wedding ceremony, many of the invited guests expressed their understanding towards us, with comments like, "You've worked hard until now," and "We'll keep supporting you." However, this public revelation later became a big issue. It turned out that Matthew's parents headed a non-profit organization dedicated to supporting disabled individuals, based on the principle of creating a society where people with disabilities can live easily. The revelation that they had been cruel to their own child who suffered from a skin disease became a problem. Eventually, the criticism and opposition from those around them didn't stop, and they were forced to step down from their leadership positions in the organization. As for my parents, it was revealed that they had accepted a substantial dowry to marry me off to Matthew, and they started being referred to as beasts who sold their own child for money by those around them. However, they squandered that dowry for their own selfish desires, and with no knowledge whatsoever, decided to dabble in stocks, leading to a huge loss. Eventually, they ended up in debt due to the tune of over $200,000, far exceeding the amount of the dowry they received. They had the audacity to ask for our help, but we firmly refused. Even when they came knocking a few more times, we moved away and changed our phone numbers. Now, we're living peacefully together. I guess there really is such a thing as a destined meeting. I am incredibly happy right now. Though the start was rocky, meeting Matthew and marrying him has made me feel truly blessed. Thank you for watching until the end. I hope to see you again in the next video.